On March 18, 2006, at 2:17 in the morning, a 21-year-old college student named Claire Robertson walked through the front door of her Portland apartment and found her roommate dead on the kitchen floor. She didn't run. She didn't scream and flee. She called 911. She stayed on the line, voice shaking, until the police arrived. She answered every question. She handed over her phone, her keys, her coat. She sat in that hallway for 4 hours while detectives worked the scene around her. She did everything right. 13 years later, Claire Robertson walked out of Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Wilsonville, Oregon. She was 34 years old. She had entered as a 21-year-old college sophomore with her whole life in front of her. She left as a woman who had spent her entire 20s and the first years of her 30s in a prison cell for a murder that DNA evidence would eventually prove she could not possibly have committed. But here is the part that will make you sick. She confessed. On video, in her own words, calmly and in detail. She told Portland Police Detective Warren Hudson exactly how she had done it, where she had hidden the weapon, and what her roommate Hannah Bauer had been wearing when she died. Every single detail was wrong. Not slightly wrong, not misremembered. Wrong because Detective Hudson had invented them. And Claire, after 14 hours without food, without sleep, without a lawyer, had simply repeated them back. That confession sent an innocent woman to prison for 13 years. And right now, as you watch this, there are 46 other people who confessed to Detective Warren Hudson still sitting in their cells. The DA's office has been asked to review those cases. They refused. This is that story. Let's go back to the beginning. It's Portland, Oregon, March of 2006. The city is cold and gray, the kind of Pacific Northwest early spring that can't decide if it's still winter. The cherry blossoms on the Portland State University campus are 2 weeks from blooming. Hannah Bauer is 22 years old. She's a junior at PSU studying social work. Her mother, Dorothy Bauer, later tells investigators that Hannah wanted to work with foster children. That she used to say, "The kids nobody else picks are the ones who need you most." She volunteers at a youth shelter on weekends. She calls her mom every Sunday at 7 p.m. without fail. She's the kind of person the world needs more of. She and Claire Robertson have been roommates since freshman year. They're not best friends. They're something more practical than that. They are two young women who trust each other, who split groceries and keep each other's spare keys and text when they're going to be home late, who have built one of those small, quiet, functional friendships that feel ordinary until they're gone. Claire is 21, pre-law, wiry, intense, the kind of student who color codes her notes and argues with professors after class. Her boyfriend, Nathan Blake, is a 23-year-old graduate student in the engineering department. They've been together 8 months. He describes her later as the most honest person he's ever met. On March 17th, a Saturday, Claire spends the evening at Nathan's apartment on the other side of campus. They watch movies. They order pizza. She stays the night. Hannah is home alone. Nobody knows exactly what happens in that apartment between 10 p.m. on March 17th and 2 a.m. on March 18th. What the evidence will eventually show is this. Someone enters the apartment, and Hannah Bauer never sees Sunday morning. When Claire comes home at 2:17 a.m. to pick up a change of clothes before an early morning study group, she finds the kitchen light on. She finds Hannah on the floor. She calls 911. Portland police arrive within 6 minutes. Detectives are on scene by 3 a.m. Claire is separated, walked to the back of a patrol car, standard procedure, and interviewed for the first time. She tells them everything. Her timeline, Nathan's address, the name of the pizza place. She offers her phone, her jacket, her fingerprints. She asks repeatedly what she can do to help. Detective Warren Hudson is the lead investigator. He's been with Portland PD for 19 years. He's closed 63 cases. He has a reputation in the department for getting confessions. His colleagues call him the closer. That nickname means something very specific. We'll get to that. In that first interview, in the back of the patrol car, Hudson is friendly, professional. He takes notes. He tells Claire she's doing great, that her cooperation is exactly what they need. He thanks her. He sends her home, back to Nathan's apartment at 4:30 a.m., and tells her he'll be in touch. Claire says later she felt relieved. She thought she'd helped. She thought she'd done the right thing. She had no idea that in that patrol car, at 4 a.m., Detective Hudson had already decided she was guilty. Now, you know who Claire is. You know what she did that night. You know she tried to help. What you don't know yet is what happened inside that interrogation room. And I promise you, nothing in this story will prepare you for it. 3 days after Hannah's death, Detective Hudson calls Claire. Routine follow-up, he tells her. Just want to make sure we have everything straight. Shouldn't take more than an hour. Claire comes voluntarily. No lawyer, no parents. She is 21 years old, and she does not think she needs one. Because innocent people don't need lawyers. That is what she believes. That is what most of us believe, because we have never been in that room. She sits down at 9:14 a.m. She will not leave until 11:26 p.m., 14 hours and 12 minutes later. The first hour is almost gentle. Hudson goes through the timeline again. He's relaxed, collegial. He brings her coffee. He calls her Claire and leans back in his chair like they're having a conversation. He asks about Nathan, about her classes, about Hannah. What was she like? What were her routines? Who were her friends? Claire answers everything. She is trying to help. She genuinely believes she is helping. Then, at the end of the first hour, Hudson leans forward. Your boyfriend, he says. Nathan. He says you left his place at 1:45 a.m. Is that right? Claire pauses. Number 1. I was there all night. I left around 2. Hudson nods slowly. He said 1:45. He didn't. Nathan Blake never changed his story. He told police then, and he will testify later, that Claire was with him from approximately 10 p.m. until she left to get her things around 2 a.m. Detective Hudson misrepresented Nathan's statement. He lied. And under American law, this is important, he was completely legally allowed to. Here's the first thing that should make your stomach drop. The Reid Technique is a police interrogation method developed in the 1950s. It is still widely taught and used in American law enforcement today. It works in 2 phases. Phase 1. Convince the suspect you already have enough evidence to convict them, that their guilt is certain, that continuing to deny is pointless. Phase 2. Once denial becomes exhausting, offer a moral justification, an escape route. Tell them that if they explain what happened, if they just say why, things will go better for them. It is extraordinarily effective. It is also extraordinarily dangerous. Because the Reid Technique does not distinguish between the guilty and the innocent. It is designed to break resistance. And resistance to interrogation looks exactly the same whether you killed someone or whether you didn't. Detective Warren Hudson was trained in the Reid Technique. He was very, very good at it. Claire Robertson is about to find that out. By 1 p.m., the tone in the room has changed. Hudson has been joined by his partner, Detective Rachel King. King is quieter than Hudson. She sits to the side, taking notes, occasionally nodding. She is playing the role of witness, of legitimizer. Her presence says, "This is serious. This is official." Hudson leans across the table. "Claire, we have evidence, physical evidence, DNA. We have a witness who saw you at the apartment earlier that evening. This isn't going away." There is no DNA evidence linking Claire to the crime. There is no witness. Hudson is lying. And again, this is legal. "I wasn't there," Claire says. "I was at Nathan's. Nathan knows I was at Nathan's. Nathan's covering for you," Hudson says. "We've talked to Nathan." They had talked to Nathan. Nathan had said exactly what he'd always said. Hudson is misrepresenting it again. "Look," Hudson says, and his voice goes softer now, like he's sharing something private. "I've seen this before. Two people living together, it gets tense. Things get said. Maybe Hannah said something that night that set you off. Maybe you didn't mean for things to go as far as they did. If that's what happened, I need you to tell me, because right now the evidence is pointing in one direction, and I can't help you if you won't help yourself." Here is the second reveal. And this one is about you as much as it is about Claire. Psychological research on false confessions, and there is a lot of it, has established something that most people find genuinely difficult to believe. It doesn't take torture to make an innocent person confess to murder. It doesn't take threats or violence. It takes time. It takes isolation. It takes a lie repeated with enough confidence that the brain begins to doubt its own memory. Studies have shown that after 8 to 12 hours of interrogation, the average person, regardless of guilt, begins to exhibit signs of cognitive deterioration. Memory becomes unreliable. The ability to hold on to a consistent narrative weakens. And critically, the brain, under extreme stress, begins to produce false memories. It fills in gaps with suggestions, with things other people tell it. Claire has been in that room for 4 hours. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't been given a proper bathroom break in 90 minutes. She is starting to shake, and she has no idea that what is happening to her has a name, that researchers have studied it, that it has happened to hundreds of people before her. It is 5 p.m. Claire has been in the interrogation room for 8 hours. She has had 2 cups of coffee and a paper cup of water. The fluorescent light above her has a faint flicker she can't stop noticing. Hudson pushes a piece of paper across the table. "Your prints are on the knife, Claire." There are no prints on the knife. The knife was wiped clean. There are no prints on it from anyone. Hudson knows this. He's lying. And he is legally permitted to do so because the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the right of law enforcement to deceive suspects during interrogation. Claire stares at the paper. "That's not possible. Your prints. On the handle. I've never touched that knife. Then how are they there?" And here, this is the moment. This is where the trap closes. Because there is no answer. You cannot explain how your prints ended up on something you never touched. You cannot disprove a lie you don't know is a lie. And the brain, in its desperation to reconcile reality, starts to generate questions it has no business generating. What if I did go home that night? What if I blocked it out? What if I was sleepwalking? What if I... At 7 p.m., Detective King leaves the room. Hudson softens. He pulls his chair around so they're sitting side by side instead of across from each other. He lowers his voice. "I have daughters," he says. "I know you're not a monster. I've been doing this 20 years and I can read people. I know you're not the kind of person who could plan something like this in cold blood, but I also know that sometimes good people who've never been in trouble in their lives, snap. Something gets said, an old wound gets poked, and things go somewhere nobody planned. He pauses. I'm not asking if you're a murderer. I'm asking if you're human. This is textbook Reid Phase 2, the offer of the moral justification. You're not bad. You just made a mistake. Tell me what happened, and we can tell the right story. A human story, not a monster story. Claire has been awake for over 20 hours. She has been in this room for 10 hours. She has been told repeatedly that the evidence proves she did this. She has been isolated from every person she trusts. Her brain is misfiring. And now a man is sitting next to her and offering her a way out. Not out of guilt, but out of the room, out of the relentlessness, out of a situation she cannot escape any other way. At 7:43 p.m., she starts to cry. I don't remember, she says. I don't know. Maybe what? Hudson says gently. Maybe I did it. I don't know. I don't remember. Hudson sits back. Something in his posture changes. He picks up his notepad. Okay, he says. Let's talk about what happened. What happens next is the most important part of this entire story. Read carefully. Hudson needs a confession that is legally coherent, one that contains details only the killer would know, one that will hold up in court. The problem is, Claire doesn't know those details because she wasn't there. So Hudson builds the confession for her. Where did you put the knife? He asks. I don't remember, Claire says. Under the sink. You hid it under the sink, right? A pause. Under the sink. What was Hannah wearing? I don't remember. The gray sweater. You remember the gray sweater. Silence. Then, the gray sweater. And you came home through the back entrance, yes? I came home through the back. Every single detail comes from Detective Hudson. Claire echoes. He records. The session lasts another hour and 40 minutes. By the time it ends, Claire has confessed to knowing where the knife was hidden, what Hannah was wearing, and how she entered the apartment that night. She knows none of these things because she did not do it. But the confession exists now. It is recorded. And when it is edited down from its full 14-hour runtime to a 90-minute presentation for the jury, it will look like a calm, voluntary, detailed account of a murder. The system is working exactly as designed. What you just heard is how an innocent person confesses to murder. But here's what you don't know yet. The gray sweater, the one detail that will convict her at trial, never existed, and it will take 13 years for anyone to prove it. Claire recants before the trial even begins. The moment she leaves that interrogation room, the moment the door opens and she is in a hallway with other people around her, the spell breaks. She calls Nathan in tears. She doesn't understand what happened. She doesn't understand what she said or why she said it. Her court-appointed attorney files a motion to suppress the confession. Coercion, extreme exhaustion, no Miranda re-advisement after the interrogation escalated. The motion is denied. The confession was obtained legally. The trial lasts 8 days. The prosecution's case is built almost entirely on the confession. The physical evidence is thin, a partial shoe print near the kitchen door that might match Claire's size, a neighbor who heard raised voices at approximately 11 p.m., though he can't identify the voices. But then there is the gray sweater. The prosecution stands before the jury and says, How did Claire Robertson know what Hannah Bauer was wearing when she died? That information was never released. It was never in the media. The only way she could know is if she was there. The jury watches 90 minutes of a young woman calmly, coherently, in her own voice, describing a murder she says she committed. They deliberate for 4 hours. Guilty. 25 years to life. Eligible for parole in 2027. Claire Robertson is 21 years old. While Claire Robertson sits in Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, a man named Eric Coleman continues his life. Coleman is 31 years old in 2006. He lives alone in Northeast Portland, 20 minutes from PSU's campus. He works sporadically. He has a prior arrest for assault in 2003, charges were dropped, and a documented restraining order from a former girlfriend. What no one knows yet is that between 2004 and 2008, Eric Coleman will attack 6 women, all of them college students, all of them in the Portland metro area, all of them assaulted in their homes or near campus at night. His DNA is collected in connection with a separate assault in 2008. It is entered into CODIS, the National DNA Database. Nobody connects it to Hannah Bauer's murder. Because Hannah Bauer's murder is already solved, there is already a conviction. The case is closed. Coleman is convicted on the 2008 assault charge and 2 others. He goes to prison. His DNA sits in the database, and Claire Robertson continues to serve her sentence. 13 years pass. In 2019, the Oregon Innocence Project takes on Claire's case. A law student spends 7 months reviewing the trial transcripts. She notices something. The gray sweater. The crime scene photographs are in the case file. Hannah Bauer is wearing a black hoodie, Portland State sweatshirt. There is no gray sweater in the photographs. No gray sweater is listed in the evidence inventory. No gray sweater is mentioned in any witness statement. She pulls the original crime scene photos. She pulls the evidence logs. She pulls the medical examiner's report, which describes the victim's clothing in detail. Black hoodie. The gray sweater never existed. It was not a misidentified garment. It was not a similar-looking item that got confused. It was invented by Detective Hudson, spoken aloud in an interrogation room to an exhausted, terrified young woman, and she repeated it back. And a prosecutor stood in front of a jury and used it to convict her. The Innocence Project petitions for DNA testing of the original evidence using technology that didn't exist in 2006. The state of Oregon opposes the petition for 7 months. The petition is eventually granted. The DNA from biological material recovered from the original crime scene on the knife near the point of entry is tested. It is male DNA. It does not match Claire Robertson. It runs through CODIS. It matches Eric Coleman. Coleman is already incarcerated. Investigators interview him in July 2019. He initially denies involvement. Then his attorney advises him that the DNA match is conclusive and a cooperation agreement is negotiable for his sentencing. He confesses. And here is what makes the floor drop out beneath you. Eric Coleman's confession contains details about Hannah Bauer's murder that were never released publicly, details that were never in the media, details that were in the sealed case file. The actual color of Hannah's sweatshirt, the actual location of the knife, the actual point of entry Coleman used to access the apartment. A real confession from the person who actually did it. Compare that to Claire Robertson's confession. Claire said, "Gray sweater." Hannah was wearing a black hoodie. Claire said, "The knife was under the sink." The knife was never under the sink. Claire said she came in through the back. Coleman came in through the front window. Every single detail Claire confessed to was wrong, because every single detail was invented by the detective who interrogated her, and a jury convicted her on it anyway. Dorothy Bauer, Hannah's mother, gave a statement to Portland media in 2006, a few weeks after Claire was convicted. She said, "The police took everything as evidence, everything from the apartment, even Hannah's favorite sweater, that gray cashmere one she lived in during winter. I always thought I'd get it back." Dorothy Bauer is not a liar. She is a mother remembering her daughter. Hannah owned a gray cashmere sweater. She wore it constantly. Her mother was right about that. What Dorothy didn't know, what no one told her, is that the sweater had been at the dry cleaners for 3 days when Hannah died. Hannah was not wearing it that night. The crime scene photographs confirm this. Hannah was wearing a black Portland State hoodie. But Dorothy's quote made the local news, and Detective Hudson read it. The gray sweater didn't come from nowhere. It came from a grieving mother's television interview. Hudson heard it. He filed it. And hours later, in an interrogation room, he used it. The gray sweater. You remember the gray sweater. It was never evidence. It was never crime scene knowledge. It was a quote from a news broadcast, repurposed as proof of guilt. And a prosecutor stood in court and told the jury, only someone who was there would know that. The prosecutor knew the detail came from the confession. The prosecutor knew the confession was obtained after a 14-hour interrogation. Whether the prosecutor knew that the detail itself was manufactured, that is a question the state of Oregon has declined to investigate. Claire Robertson's conviction is vacated by the Multnomah County Circuit Court on August 14, 2019. She is 34 years old. She served 13 years, 4 months, and 27 days. She missed her 20s. She missed her college graduation. She missed Nathan Blake's wedding. He met someone else, had 2 kids. He still writes to Claire, still calls himself her friend. She missed her father's death in 2013. She sat in a cell at Coffee Creek while Dorothy Bauer grieved alone, carrying a version of events that told her Hannah's roommate had killed her daughter. She steps through the gates of Coffee Creek on a Thursday morning. Her mother is waiting. They hold each other in the parking lot for a long time without speaking. A journalist asks Claire as she walks to the car, "What's the first thing you want to do?" She says, "I want to sleep in a room with a window." Detective Warren Hudson retired from Portland PD in 2014 on a full pension. He has not been charged with any crime. Under Oregon law, his conduct during the interrogation was legal at every step. He was permitted to lie about evidence. He was permitted to misrepresent witness statements. He was permitted to use psychological pressure tactics. The confession he obtained was ruled voluntary. He gives no media interviews following Claire's exoneration. I want to be careful here, because this is the part of the story where it's easy to reach for simple answers. Is Warren Hudson a monster? I don't know. Here's what I do know. In 2006, Hudson believed Claire Robertson had killed her roommate. He was wrong, but his belief was not irrational given what he knew at the time. A cooperative witness who discovers the body, a slightly misremembered timeline, the standard profile of intimate circumstance homicide, these are the things that pointed his attention toward Claire. Detectives work with incomplete information. They make judgment calls. But here is what is harder to excuse. Hudson did not invent the Reid Technique, but he knew what it could do to an innocent person. Every interrogator does. The research on false confessions has been public since the 1990s. Hudson chose to use a method he knew was capable of extracting admissions from innocent people on a young woman with no criminal history, no lawyer, no food, no sleep, for 14 hours. And then he manufactured a detail, the gray sweater, and fed it to her in a moment of maximum psychological vulnerability. That detail sent her to prison. The law says it's legal. Whether the law is right about that, that is the question this case forces us to ask. In the 18 months since Claire Robertson's exoneration, the Oregon Innocence Project has formally requested that the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office review all closed cases in which Detective Warren Hudson obtained a confession. That number is 47. Claire's case is 1. 46 remain. The DA's office denied the request. The official statement read, "A review of this scope would be resource-intensive and could undermine public confidence in the criminal justice system." I want you to sit with that sentence for a moment. Could undermine public confidence in the criminal justice system. Not, we believe all 46 cases are solid. Not, we have reviewed the evidence and stand by the convictions. Not, the people in those cells are guilty. Just, reviewing it would make people lose faith. The system protecting itself. There are 46 people who confessed to Detective Warren Hudson still incarcerated in Oregon state facilities. Based on what we now know about how Hudson operated, some of them may have been convicted on manufactured details, misrepresented evidence, and confessions extracted from people who were too exhausted to know their own names. We don't know which ones. We are not being allowed to find out. And the families of the victims in those 46 cases, families like Dorothy Bauer, who loved a daughter and needed to know her killer faced justice, those families may or may not have closure. Some may have the wrong person in prison. Some may have the right person. But until those cases are reviewed, we will never know. That is what the DA's office decided is an acceptable situation. Here is the uncomfortable part. Detective Warren Hudson used legal methods. Every single thing he did in that interrogation room, the lies, the misrepresentations, the psychological pressure, the softening, the moral justification, was within the bounds of American law. The Supreme Court of the United States has repeatedly affirmed that police may lie to suspects during interrogations. They may fabricate evidence. They may misrepresent witness statements. If that surprises you, you are not alone. But here is the real question. The one that splits people who think seriously about this case. Was Detective Hudson evil, or was he a product? He was trained in a system that taught him these methods. He used those methods because the department sanctioned them. He closed cases, 63 of them, because those methods worked. The department rewarded his closures. The DA's office accepted his confessions. The courts found them valid. The juries believed them. At every step, every institution said, yes, this is correct. This is how we do it. And an innocent 21-year-old woman went to prison for 13 years because everyone was doing their job correctly. That is not a story about one bad detective. That is a story about a system. The Reid Technique is still in use. Police are still legally permitted to lie to suspects. Interrogations are still not required to be recorded in full in every state. And 46 people who confessed to Warren Hudson are still in their cells. Claire Robertson lives in Portland. She is 39 years old. She works with the Oregon Innocence Project as a case reviewer. She has a small apartment with a window that faces east, and she says the morning light was the first thing she learned to love again. She does not speak publicly about what happened in that interrogation room very often. When she does, she is precise. She does not call Hudson a monster. She says, he was doing what he was trained to do. The training is the problem. She has said, and this might be the most important thing she has ever said, the scariest moment wasn't when I said it. The scariest moment was afterward, when I understood that I had done it to myself. That the tools he used were tools that worked on me specifically because I trusted the system. Because I went in there believing that if I cooperated, if I was honest, the truth would come out. She pauses. I was raised to believe that cooperating with the police protects you. That's what my parents taught me. That's what school taught me. It's not true. And not knowing that cost me 13 years. Dorothy Bauer, Hannah's mother, reached out to Claire following the exoneration. They met once in a coffee shop in Southeast Portland in October 2019. Neither of them has described in detail what was said in that meeting. They were seen holding hands across the table. Eric Coleman is currently serving a consolidated sentence in the Oregon Department of Corrections. He is not eligible for parole until 2041. Detective Warren Hudson lives in the Portland suburb of Lake Oswego. He has made no public statement about Claire Robertson's exoneration. I'm going to ask you to do something before you click away. Not for a subscribe, not for an algorithm, for the 46 people whose cases haven't been reviewed. The Multnomah County DA's office cited public confidence as the reason not to look at those cases. That argument only holds as long as the public doesn't pay attention. Research on wrongful convictions consistently shows that the single most effective driver of case reviews is sustained public pressure. Not petitions, not hashtags, attention. The kind that doesn't go away. The kind that makes it more uncomfortable to do nothing than to act. Claire Robertson knows who she is. She knows what was done to her. She knows the gray sweater didn't exist. 46 other people are still waiting for someone to look. Share this story, not because I made it, because they're still in there.